resources that were laying untapped. Now, but no nation can develop as expected or even catch up with their peers if you do not invest in research and development. And one of the reasons the Nigerian economy is in troubled waters is the dependence on oil as a prime mover of the economy. In recent times, the non-oil exports have been boosted, but we can tell you that it is still too low. Oil remains the prime mover because apart from the quantum, is also the main forex earner. And so if you don't have oil and you don't have forex, that's what you see happening to the naira, falling every day. But one way to counteract this is to spend a lot more money on research and development to engage those in the knowledge area, because this has proven to be a way in which you can change many things. And many countries have found out that with much more money in research and development, you can actually boost productivity of a nation and boost the economy. I will return to the question of productivity much later. But what you will find for African countries in a comparison with other nations of the world is that we spend less than, none of us spends up to 1% of a GDP on research and development. As a matter of fact, Nigeria spends 0.13%, less than 0.2%. So what do you expect when COVID happened and nations that had spent money on research and development developed the vaccines? What was our argument? Our argument was on equality or equity. Deserves that we have access. That was an argument that could be easily faulted because they had invested the money, and it's about time that we woke up to begin to do likewise. So you find out that nations like South Korea, Republic of Korea, spend as high as 4.8%, and even South Africa spends something like 6 times what we spend on research and development. Now, why would you be interested in research and development? Is because you want to boost productivity. And let me make this statement straight away, that productivity, though a ratio of output to input, is the way you make money. That's the way you create money. So any nation whose productivity is low is usually marked by a poor economy, poor foreign exchange regime, and usually poverty below the lines that are recommended. So the wealth of nations have been found to correlate very well with productivity. And like I said before, the big problem with Nigeria is that our population growth is far higher than the rate of productivity, which is the capital GDP rate. And what that means for us is that we continue to lag behind in creating wealth. Now, there are many ways to go around it, and one of the ways is to begin to put money in research and development, and that is where you need the knowledge community, and that is where you begin to need the higher educational institutions. Now, the focus on continuous productivity must be something we put our minds to, and for which we fight continuously to make sure that we can begin to catch up. And I'll tell you, even though we are behind, much later towards the end of the lecture, we'll discuss how we can catch up and probably, in fact, almost get in front. Now, higher educational institutions. In the 80s and the 90s, there was a general belief that funding primary education was the most significant thing you needed to do if you were a developing nation. And this was recommended to us, and that's why today you have superb, SPEB, and all kinds of other units that monitor the primary and the secondary education. Much later in the 90s, the secondary education was also emphasized, so we moved into it. But developing nations were told higher education was not something you need to concern yourself too much about, at least for now. But we found out that that was like creating a dam into which you you put a lot of water and there was no exit. And of course, what will happen to such a dam is that it will collapse. So it was a matter of time before we started having problems. And today, there's a lot more emphasis globally and even for developing nations on what to do on higher education. And that is why we're mainly here today. And let me tell you that some of our institutions missed out in the 90s when we even had help from outside. And I can tell you a particular case in which I was partly involved, which was JICA. That's a Japanese institution for overseas cooperation, who wanted to invest money in my faculty, and they were to give us turnkey laboratories, turnkey classrooms. That is, they don't give you the money, they build it, they hand you the money. Unfortunately, a new regime came on board, and you know, Japan cannot give you money except your country signs. The nation must approve it, and that's where we ran into trouble, because the president then said,